Well, let's do this.
Mhm.
Let's shift into some. 'Cause I don't want to just talk about, oh, we need to have brave spaces. I want to talk about what that looked like. How does that
Yeah.
come about? And is that something like, when do we start creating these brave spaces? Is this a physical room? Is this just an environment or a culture? Like, where would you start when it comes to creating those brave spaces?
Sometimes it starts at the kitchen table.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes it starts right at home. And and growing up in New Orleans, Louisiana, with both of my parents, my mom was, it still is, she's Catholic born and raised. My dad is Baptist. And so we traded traditions and culture and values over meals. And so for us, I took my cues from my parents based on how I saw them showing up in conversation. So whether or not it was economic prosperity, education, religion, or culture, like, pop culture movies, I took my cues from them on how they showed up in the world. And so it starts with, what is the environment you are actually conditioned in? Are there spaces where you can absolutely be authentic and bring all of you to the table? In my household, as much as I love my parents, and if they see this, they will agree. You couldn't be all of who you wanted to be because my parents didn't play. Dad, Vietnam veteran, army man. He, didn't say much, but when he said something, it spoke volumes. And so it started there, with understanding that there are particular things that were acceptable in regards to my character, the identities I brought to the table, and the spaces I could occupy, and where I could advocate for myself. And then I found myself in school navigating and negotiating. Well, all right, you all are talking about I need to be, bring my full self to school, bring my full self to work. Well, I have learned as a Black man in this America, that is not necessarily true. You can't bring all, because there are some things that viscerally the world is not always ready for, depending on who's in the room and what has been their exposure to Black men who happen to be 6'3" or tall or dark chocolate or queer. Like, all of that is a thing. So some of this starts at the kitchen table with our families. There are other spaces we occupy, whether or not it's church groups, and sometimes it is being in a Bible study class. Sometimes it may be hanging out with the girls and the girlfriends or the fellas, and you're kind of in your own social circles. And again, I find that it's about, how are we spending time in space and recognizing we have some commonalities on how we want to live into our relationship. And that may be that we are always going to be 100 and 100 with one another. Well, I've been in spaces where that seems to be a norm, but that's not necessarily true, because people don't always receive the truth in a way that is delivered, right? And so you have to constantly make sure that the people in the space understand the ground rules of how we are going to be in this space. So sometimes it is in friendships, sometimes it's in our familial relationships, in our like, I'm in a relationship now. And so with my partner, we still working on making sure that in our home, in our space, that we continue to live in love, and we have to be very clear and explicit about how we going to live into our own set of norms and our values, and how, we're really working to not be angry when we go to bed. Like, anger should not be in the bedroom. Like, it's very important. And I also think about, okay, well, what are some of the other norms, and how does that actually show up in my different relationships? So for some of my friends, in regards to the spaces that are very intimate, but are incredibly nurturing, are, can I trust you? It makes me think about Dr. Brene Brown. Can I trust you with the things that are most vulnerable and close to me, and know that you will protect them, that you won't share them out with anyone, that I know that you're going to hold on to that? Are you going to have a sense of integrity, so that when I really need you and I need to lean on you? Medea talked about, Don't, sometimes people are a leaf or a branch, and sometimes
Yeah.
you lean upon them people and think that they, strong enough and they can't. Like, do you have the integrity to stand with me when I'm going through stuff? And so for each space and each grouping, I think it has to be clear about what is our why and what we do as a relationship, but also how are we going to set norms about being together? Because that is the thing that I have come to learn makes or breaks good relationships.